Hello everyone, and welcome to Dream Week 2021. I'm City Councilwoman Jada Andrews-Sullivan. I represent District 2 here in the great city of San Antonio. That's your northeast, your east, downtown, some of your southeast areas of the city of San Antonio. I stand before you as I speak about a journey of a young girl who was born in the city of San Antonio out at Woodford Hall Hospital and then raised here in District 2 in the city of San Antonio, and who stands in front of you now as the woman that you see. These humble beginnings started right here on 442 Hub Avenue, where my mother still resides today. She was 13 when she moved into that house, and she's raised 2 children, 6 grandchildren, and in the process of raising great-grandchildren. I speak about this home because it is our legacy. It is a place that my late grandfather and my late grandmother, the Reverend Vernell Ferguson and Lenora Ferguson, built and made sure that they produced a legacy and a generational area for their families to come to. So you wonder, why is she up there talking about Jada? Who is Jada? Where did she come from? Like, we know she was born here in San Antonio. We know she's on city council. But how did we get to this place today? Well, I want you to take a moment to take a journey with me, to listen to a story that kind of brings about the whole identity of who Jada Andrews-Sullivan is. How did Jada begin? What does Jada really mean? And then what is she really made of? And that is the journey that we will take you up on this descendant portion of Dream Week. So I can start off by telling you a little bit about what I found out about Jada with my father's help. We did something called Ancestry.com. I know plenty of you understand what that is. And it brought me to an understanding that I'm Nigerian, I have a little bit of Spanish in me, a little bit of French, some indigenous Native American from the North is what it says. That my family originated in the original Virginias when they were transported here through the slave trade, and that we migrated here to Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. I found out more and more about myself as we went through this journey of understanding our identity, who we are, where we come from, where we're going. And it helps me to understand how to make sure that my children have the strength they need to continue to do the same thing. So let's take you to this young Jada, the birth, where I came by way of my mother, who was a worker at Southwestern Bell, and my father, who is a retired Master Sergeant out of the Air Force, right here out at Woodford Hall. I was born at 5 pounds, but my mother wasn't even ready to have me, but of course, this little girl was in a rush. I was in a rush to see what God really had prepared for me and my purpose and my destiny and my journey that I would go forward to have. I can honestly tell you guys, it has not been an easy one. It has not been a crystal stair, and it has not been a full rosebud. But it is still blooming, and it's still growing. It's still being nurtured. It's still being brought to fruition, the things that God has given unto me in my visions. And so as I think about what my name is, I asked my mother, where did my name come from? Now, mind you guys, I have grandfathers on both sides of my family who were Baptist ministers. So everything had everything to do with their spiritual relationship. My grandfather named me Jada, but no one knew what Jada meant. My grandfather named me, and he passed on my 2nd birthday, so I never had the opportunity to ask. But because I knew that my grandfather, who he was and how strong he was in his relationship, spiritually, I knew I needed to go research. And it says to study to show thyself approved, and so I had to go study to find out what Jada needed to know for Jada. I found out that Jada means he who knows. But I was always questioning, what do I know? Do I know it? And how do I get there? I started off with this idea that life was just grand and everything could come up roses and everything would be beautiful. And you have this sense of not understanding the troubles of the world going around you. You don't have the sense of understanding what it is to pay a bill, to keep a roof over the head, to keep the water running, the lights on. So those things we take for granted as we're youth because we're so in a rush to become adults, not understanding all of the things that an adult has to do to make sure that life is continued. Well, I was in a quick rush and I became a mother, at 16 at Sam Houston High School, where it was already a stigma and a statistic if you were a young African-American woman that became a mother while in high school. But because of my strength and my dignity and my understanding and because of the descendants that I come from, that was not an option to give up. So I ended up graduating at 16. And I graduated still trying to figure out, what do I know about being a mother, being a graduate, having to raise a child? And thankfully, because of the knowledge that my mother had been given from her mother and her mother, we were able to get through one of the hardest times as a child, becoming a mother. So I decided, okay, I graduated, now what? Go off to the one school I applied for, the one university I wanted to go to, the University of Texas at Austin. I learned about the University of Texas at Austin because there was a program that I was in middle school called the University Outreach Program. Now see, this is where it comes in handy when you have people that push you, when you have a lineage that continues to push you, when you have a lineage of people that always pushed and elevated and uplifted others. This is what happens to your life. It kind of gets pushed into an elevation process. And so I went off to UT at Austin, and I thought that Jada understood how to make this work as a 16-year-old person, can't even sign your own dorm papers, can't get your own student loans, but you're a mother, so you should be able to do a lot more, right? Not gonna happen. But I decided that I would try to grow into this strength that I was walking into. I would take classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, catch the Greyhound bus right down here by the Tobin Center here in the city of San Antonio. And then I would stay here on all weekend and catch that same Greyhound back to Austin to make sure I make it to my first class on Tuesday. Great thought process. Didn't understand the toll it would take mentally, emotionally, physically, but most definitely financially. My mother had 2 kids in college, my brother at Texas Southern in Houston, me at UT at Austin. She was the single mother raising 2 college kids with her name on all of our loan paperwork. Was that fair? Somewhere in my DNA, people said, no, you have to get up and go get it yourself. So I joined the military. Now, mind you guys, I told you my father was a retired Air Force Master Sergeant. I went Army, totally different thing. My mindset was I was gonna go in the Air Force, but I was a single mother trying to raise my daughter, and me giving my daughter up for custody just to go into the United States Air Force was not something in my DNA and my lineage we were taught to do. You stand up for your own, you take care of your own, and you make sure that you give them a foundation. You have to build something for others. You have to build something for yourself. So I decided I was gonna go Army. And I was ready. It was gonna be my career. I had it all planned out, my daughter, where she was gonna go, how we were gonna make this a beautiful thing. However, you know, that's the thing when you have your own plans. And it's something that says God's thoughts are not your thoughts and his plans are not your plans and his ways are not your ways. And so I had to move out of my own way in order for God to make the way that I was supposed to have in this journey along this legacy of being an Andrews, along this legacy of being a Ferguson, along this legacy of being a Williams, along this legacy of being a Slade, along this legacy of being a Walton. Now those are all of my family names, my heritage names, where we descended from, the names we were given when we got here, the names that were given to us when we were adopted or sold off. And so as I look at the lessons and the legacies, and I read the names and I read the missions, and I look back on my great-grandmother, I remember I was little and my grandmother's hair was this long silver gold, full of wisdom is what we used to say. Her hair carried the words and the life of wisdom, and we would brush her hair. But that was the Native American side of us. And she would sit there and she would try to instill into us wisdom and knowledge of understanding where our ancestors were coming from. And so I started to learn more and more and more about this strength that is within us when we start to live in who we are, where we come from, and the strength that they had to overcome the things that they had to overcome. And then that's when you realize that why do we sit today and wallow or dwell in the mindset that maybe we're just not worthy or we're not good enough, when we've seen that when we have people in our legacy that have come through things that have made and laid a foundation of how we continue to change, then we start to gain our strength. So I have 4 kids, and all my babies are called my little grown people because they're 28, 24, 23, and 20. And the reason I say that is because all 4 of these babies are my miracles. If you're looking at me, you're looking like, okay, 4 kids, and they're all grown. Yes, they're my miracles because each one of them were preemies. And when you have a premature baby, not only one, but twice, but to have 4, you defy odds that even medical science still to today is trying to figure out how. But it's Jada, and Jada doesn't know much about medical science when it comes to premature babies, but I can tell you that they are all my blessings. So when you look at the strength that you have to have as an African-American woman, and we're dealing in the times that we're in, and we know that African-American women and mortality and morbidity rates when it comes to giving birth are some of the highest right now in our nation. But I defied those odds. But what was it about me? It wasn't just Jada. It had to be something that was in my DNA that helped not only me defy the odds, but those 4 angels that I call my miracles to defy the odds as well. Well, you look at the heritage, and you look at the heritage that we come from not only Nigeria and Congo, but you look at the heritage that we're Native American. These are fighting spirits. These are spirits that continue to burn oil and fuel and fire and breathe life into situations. When you look at the side of me that has the Spanish and the French, those are also fighting spirits. So if you know anything about Jada now, you know she has a fighting spirit, and she's gonna go forth and do what is needed to be done for people. But it didn't take Jada understanding that. It took me going through some hard times. And not only becoming a mother at 16, but becoming a survivor of domestic violence. I lived my life. I lived it through the eyes of understanding what a woman has to go through, not only to fight for her sanity, to fight for her kids, to fight for her freedom, to fight for her financial right to stand on her own, but I learned that you have to fight to make sure that those that are standing behind you don't have to go through the same thing. It's a fighting spirit that helped me understand that my great-grandparents, when they had to be separated from their children, and their children were sold and adopted off to other families, they had to keep fighting to bring those family units back together. So when I look at my mother and my father, they fought to stay together because he was Air Force. She was working in the city. She had her parents to take care of. They were getting older. But then they fought to still stay together because guess what? They had my brother and they had me. And when you have 2 special gifts, you kind of work towards things. Everything doesn't always work out the way that we want it, but it always works out for the best. And your best is what you continue to aim for. And I always remember that you have to continue to do your best to get to better. And then when you get to better, you don't stop there because you have to keep going because there's other torches that have to be lit behind you. So when we think about this descent and we think about where we come from, we have to also think about who are we going to make sure that we are making their light shine for the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. How can you see yourself giving energy and power and strength to those that walk in your shoes right behind you? If you are a mother, your strength is to understand that each one of your children are unique. If you are a father, your strength is to understand that you are supposed to uplift that little girl who needs that understanding that dad is going to always be there. Or to teach that young man exactly what it means to tie a tie. These are the things that we have to make sure that we're continuing to pass down from generation to generation. Even though the traditions may change, the originality of how we do things change, and how we look at each other can all be seen on one view. We are all human. We are all living in this human race, one accord. If I bleed, you bleed. And that's the same way that we all have to work together. It's one united voice, one united gift, building each other, bringing each other together. And even though right now we are in a time of separation, and we're doing this in a platform that we never thought it would be done before, because there is still a fighter and that fighter spirit in us, we refuse to allow where we are today within this COVID realm to hold us back from making sure that we speak to the legacy and the generations and how we can build each other up. Even though that we are here today, separated by the social distancing of the world, in a virtual reality, in an empty platform, we still have a mission. And that is what is within Jada. So yes, I was the shy little girl that always thought that things could come up roses. Then I became this insecure little woman that just didn't understand exactly what life had for her. But now I stand in front of you, Jada Andrews-Sullivan, City Councilwoman for District 2, understanding and believing that there is still something better. There's still something more. There's still that fighting spirit. And there's still a legacy that we have to lay the foundation for, not only for my family, but for the city of San Antonio. As I close tonight, I want to say thank you. I want to thank Show with Dream Week. I want to thank the city of San Antonio. But I want to thank each and every one of you that understands today you are going to no longer just sit and wait for things to understand what they're supposed to be. But you'll find your fighting spirit based on who you are descendants of. And you will use that fighting spirit to not only think of yourself as one star, but as a stratosphere of stars that are shining bright for the next generation and the next legacy to come. Again, I am City Councilwoman Jada Andrews-Sullivan. I thank you for your time and have a blessed day.